Late evening settled over the Grand Music Academy, the kind of quiet where every sound seemed to linger. The stage lights were dim, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floor. Mr. Harris, the elderly janitor, moved slowly down the aisle, his mop gliding back and forth with practiced rhythm. His back was slightly bent from years of work, but there was a certain gentleness in the way he handled every task, as if caring for the place was more than just a job. Near the center of the stage sat the grand piano, its black surface gleaming under a faint spotlight. It wasn't just any piano, it belonged to Lila, the Academy's most celebrated student, a girl from one of the city's wealthiest families. Mr. Harris had heard her play countless times while sweeping in the back, each performance flawless yet distant, like a song wrapped in glass. Tonight, however, the hall was empty. He paused his cleaning, eyes drawn to the piano as if it were calling to him. Slowly, almost guiltily, he walked up the stage. His fingers hovered above the keys, hesitating, remembering. With a soft breath, he pressed one note. The sound echoed, warm and alive. He sat down and, without quite meaning to, began to play a melody he hadn't touched in decades, a simple, tender tune his late wife had loved. The notes seemed to float in the stillness, carrying with them memories of love, loss, and moments long gone, filling the empty hall with something more than music. Lila had been halfway home when she realized she had left an important sheet of music behind. Frustrated, she turned back, her heels clicking against the marble hallway as she made her way to the recital hall. The building was almost completely dark, the faint glow from the stage guiding her steps. As she reached the doorway, she stopped abruptly. A soft, flowing melody drifted through the air, gentle yet powerful, filled with a depth she had never heard in any of her peers' performances. Her eyes searched the stage, expecting to see another student. Instead, she saw Mr. Harris, the janitor, seated at her piano. His posture was slightly hunched, but his hands, they moved with a quiet mastery, gliding over the keys as if they had been born to play. Lila stayed hidden in the shadows, unable to interrupt. She noticed how he closed his eyes, how each note seemed to come from someplace deep within him rather than from the sheet music she always depended on. It wasn't polished in the way her competitions demanded, yet it was raw, alive, and heartbreakingly beautiful. In that moment, the wealthy, talented girl who was used to being the center of attention realized she was witnessing something far more precious than technical perfection. She saw a man whose music carried a lifetime of stories, ones she had never imagined he possessed. Standing there quietly, she felt an unfamiliar pull in her heart, a respect that went far beyond anything she had ever felt for another musician. The next afternoon, the recital hall buzzed with energy. Students tuned their instruments, teachers reviewed notes, and the air was thick with the usual tension before an important rehearsal. Lila stood near the piano, flipping through her sheet music, but her mind kept wandering back to the night before. She couldn't shake the image of Mr. Harris playing, how effortlessly emotion had poured from his fingers. As the rehearsal began, her teacher called her name, expecting her to take her seat and perform. Instead, she set her music aside and scanned the room until her eyes found him. Mr. Harris was off to the side, broom in hand, quietly sweeping a corner, unnoticed by nearly everyone. Without warning, Lila walked across the stage toward him. Conversations hushed as people realized where she was going. She stopped in front of him and said clearly, "Will you play for us?" Mr. Harris froze, his eyes wide, as if he hadn't heard her correctly. "Me?" he asked, almost in disbelief. Whispers rippled through the hall, students exchanging puzzled glances, teachers frowning in confusion. Lila's voice softened, but her gaze remained steady. "Yes. You. Please." For a moment, he seemed ready to decline, clutching the broom like a shield. But something in her expression, an earnestness he couldn't quite name, made him pause. Slowly, hesitantly, he set the broom aside. The room grew still, the kind of silence that seemed to press in from every corner. All eyes were now on the janitor, waiting to see what would happen next at Mr. Harris lowered himself onto the piano bench, his hands resting lightly on the keys. For a moment, he just sat there, staring at them, the weight of 100 unspoken memories pressing down on his shoulders. A faint tremor ran through his fingers as he played the first note. It was soft, almost shy, but it lingered in the air like a whisper meant to be heard. Gradually, the music began to flow, each chord blending seamlessly into the next. The hesitant touch transformed into confident strokes, and soon the entire hall was filled with a melody so rich and heartfelt it seemed to bypass the ears and go straight to the soul. Every note carried a story, of love shared, of dreams deferred, of loss endured. Students who had been slouched in their chairs now sat upright, captivated. Teachers who moments earlier were checking their watches now leaned forward, unable to look away. The music rose and fell like a tide, swelling with emotion, then retreating into delicate, aching phrases. By the time Mr. Harris played the final lingering chord, the sound seemed to hang in the still air long after his hands had left the keys. No one moved. The room was heavy with a silence that wasn't emptiness but awe. A few eyes glistened with tears. Others simply stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. In that quiet, it was clear, he had given them something far more powerful than a performance. He had given them a piece of his soul. Lila stepped forward, her heels clicking softly against the stage floor, breaking the spell of silence. She didn't hesitate, she wrapped her arms around Mr. Harris in a warm embrace, the kind that spoke louder than words. "You shouldn't just play in secret," she said, her voice trembling but certain. The room, still hushed, seemed to lean in to hear her next words. She turned toward the audience, students, teachers, and staff, and announced, "I'm organizing a community concert, and Mr. Harris will be our featured performer." A collective gasp swept through the hall, followed quickly by applause that grew louder and louder until it filled the space like thunder. Mr. Harris stood frozen, tears welling in his eyes, his hands slightly shaking. He had spent years blending into the background, unnoticed, his music locked away as a private treasure. Now, in a single moment, that hidden part of him had been pulled into the light. I don't know what to say," he whispered, his voice breaking. Lila smiled through her own tears. "Just say yes." He nodded slowly, overwhelmed by a mix of disbelief and gratitude. Around them, the clapping continued, but for Mr. Harris, the sound felt like a heartbeat, steady, affirming, alive. In that instant, the janitor who once thought his time had passed realized something profound: it's never too late for a dream to be heard. And for everyone in that hall, the day became a reminder that talent, kindness, and courage can come from the most unexpected places.